Sure. In 1568, an English sailor said he walked across the interior of North America, from Mexico to Nova Scotia. His name was David Ingram. The claim survives. The walk does not. Everything this episode can honestly tell you sits inside that gap, and the gap is the story. Here is the full extent of the evidence in front of me. A 16th century English sailor and explorer, born around 1542, still alive at some point after 1583, recorded under 3 spellings of the same name: David Ingram, Davy Ingrams, David Ingram, and one assertion attached to him, made by him, that in 1568 he crossed the continental interior on foot from Mexico to Nova Scotia. That is the ledger. Not a route, not a date of departure, not a companion, a landmark, a river crossing, or a rescue. So the promise in the title deserves an immediate, honest answer. David Ingram is on record as claiming a continental walk, and the record shows him alive long after the year he said he made it. That much holds. But the desert in that framing is an inference drawn from geography, not a documented condition. The source available to me does not say he entered arid country, does not name the terrain he crossed, and does not describe a single day of weather. If you came for a heat log and a water calculation, the archive cannot give you one, and I am not going to build one out of nothing. What the archive can give you is stranger and in some ways harder. Consider the arithmetic of his own claim, because the numbers in it are the only measurements available. If the approximate birth year holds, Ingram was roughly 26 in 1568. The endpoints he named Mexico and Nova Scotia are separated by the entire eastern and central width of the continent. A journey between those 2 points, on foot, in that century, by a man with no map of the interior, no established route, no resupply, and no institutional relief anywhere along the way, would have been one of the most extreme, unassisted overland movements ever asserted by a European in that period. That is the size of the claim, and the size of the claim is exactly why it has never sat comfortably in the record. This is the point where a survival documentary normally shifts gears. The accident arrives, the ship is lost, the party splits, the water runs out, and the decision clock starts. In this case, the accident is missing from the evidence entirely. I cannot tell you how David Ingram came to be standing in Mexico in 1568 because the source available to me does not say. It records the destination, the origin, the year, and the man. It does not record the break that started him walking. So the isolation in this story has 2 layers, and only one of them is about a person alone in a landscape. The first layer is the claimed one. Whatever route Ingram described, no relief system existed along it. In 1568, there was no continental postal network, no survey, no mapped interior, no chain of European settlements between the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic Maritime Northeast to fall back on. Any traveler moving through that space depended on whatever water, food, shelter, and human contact he encountered as he encountered it. The record I have does not describe how or whether Ingram managed that. It only records that he said he came out the far side. The second layer of isolation is the one I can actually verify, and it is documentary. Ingram's account is isolated in the evidence. It arrives without the supporting apparatus that makes a survival case reconstructible. No corroborating traveler, no inquiry, no logbook, no independent sighting at any midpoint of the route in the material supplied to me. A verified survival story is usually held up by other people's paperwork. This one is held up by a name and a sentence. That absence is what makes the case a genuine test rather than an adventure. Because the questions a survival investigator would ask first are precisely the questions this record cannot answer. How many days? Which direction out of Mexico? What he drank and how often he found it? Whether he traveled alone the whole way or moved between communities who fed him? Whether he was injured? Whether his feet held? Every one of those has a physical answer somewhere in the past, and none of them survives in the evidence available here. The options for reconstruction collapse almost immediately, and they collapse not because the terrain was hostile, but because the documentation is thin, which brings us to the one consequential choice this record does preserve. David Ingram chose to tell it. That is the decision the archive actually holds, and it is not a small one. In the 16th century, a returning sailor's account was testimony. It could shape where ships went next, who funded them, and what Europeans believed lay in the continental interior. To assert a Mexico to Nova Scotia crossing was to place yourself as the sole authority on a space nobody else present could contradict or confirm. The claim traveled well. It attached to his name so firmly that the name itself came down to us in 3 spellings, while the assertion stayed intact. The resolution, at the level of certainty the evidence supports, is this: there is no verified account of the crossing. There is a documented man who claimed it, and a documented life that continued afterward. Ingram was still alive at some point after 1583, which is at least 15 years past the year he named. He did not vanish into the story he told. Whatever happened in 1568, the person who described it went on existing in the record for a decade and a half beyond it, and that survival is the part of the case that does not depend on believing him. The aftermath is where a modern viewer should be most careful. I have no inquiry findings, no medical record, no examination of his condition on return, and no independent assessment of his route in the material available to me. Historians have long treated accounts of this kind with caution, and the honest classification for the crossing itself is unresolved claim, not established fact, not disproven, not confirmed, unresolved on this evidence. What this specific case demonstrates is narrow and worth stating precisely. A survival claim can outlive the conditions that would let anyone test it. The archive preserved the assertion and lost the physical constraints, and those constraints are the only things that could ever have made the story verifiable. Distance, water, terrain, time, injury, contact with other people. Strip those out, and what remains is a shape, not a survival. Ingram's case survived by being memorable rather than by being documented, and the two are not the same thing. That is also why this episode refuses the easy version. It would take very little to write a desert into it. The cracked ground, the rationed water, the decision at dusk. None of that is in the source. Inventing it would produce a better-sounding story and a worse one, because the moment a reconstruction fills its own gaps, it stops being evidence about a real person and becomes a set piece wearing his name. So the answer to the question in the title is a qualified yes, and the qualification is the point. David Ingram walked out of the record alive. He is documented as a sailor and explorer, documented as claiming a continental crossing in 1568, and documented as living years beyond it. Whether he crossed what he said he crossed is a question the surviving evidence does not close. The next case in this series has the opposite problem. Too much documentation, time-stamped, mapped, and measured, where every hour of the ordeal is on file and the survivor's own account is the part that conflicts with it.